I've always known that my grandson, Tyler, loved me. He's a bright boy, full of energy, with that stubborn streak that reminds me so much of his father when he was young. But lately, he's been in that phase where youth tricks you into thinking you're invincible, and everyone older than you is just weak. It stung more than I wanted to admit. The first time it really showed was during a simple afternoon at my house. I was in the kitchen, struggling to open a jar of preserves I had canned last summer. My hands, though steady, didn't have the same grip they once did. Tyler, watching from the living room, smirked and said, "Grandma, you can't do that. You're too weak. Let me." The words hit harder than the stubborn lid ever could. I handed it to him with a quiet smile, but inside, my heart ached. To him, I wasn't the woman who had raised 3 children, worked double shifts, and built a life from scratch. I wasn't the woman who had weathered storms, both literal and emotional. To him, in that moment, I was just an old lady too fragile to twist a lid. It didn't stop there. A week later, he offered to carry groceries in from the car. Normally, I would have let him, but I insisted on helping. He laughed lightly, shaking his head. "Grandma, these bags are heavy. You'll hurt yourself." I bit my tongue. He didn't mean harm, but each little comment chipped away at me, building a wall between the way I saw myself and the way he saw me. That night, as I sat in my chair knitting, I couldn't help but think of all the times in my life when strength wasn't a choice, it was a necessity. I remembered lifting my children in my arms when they cried, hauling wood in the dead of winter when our heater broke, standing tall when my husband passed, holding the family together when grief threatened to rip us apart. Too weak? If only Tyler knew. The turning point came on an ordinary Saturday morning. Tyler was over for the weekend, sprawled on the couch with his phone while I tidied the house. Outside, the sun was shining and the air carried that crisp freshness of early spring.
"Come on, Tyler," I said cheerfully. "Let's go for a walk. It's too beautiful a day to waste indoors." He groaned. "Grandma, you don't have to do that. Walking's probably too much for you." I paused, broom in hand, my chest tightening with equal parts sadness and determination. I wanted to show him that I wasn't fragile. I wanted him to see me as I truly was, not as the frail shadow he imagined. But I didn't know that fate itself was about to intervene in a way neither of us could have predicted. We ended up going out anyway. I insisted, and after some complaining, he finally put on his sneakers. We walked through the neighborhood, the air filled with bird song, trees swaying gently as if whispering secrets to the wind. Tyler walked ahead, earbuds in, half listening to me point out the flowers blooming in Mrs. Henderson's yard, or the way the clouds stretched like ribbons across the sky. We reached the small wooden bridge that crossed over the creek. It wasn't far from the house, but it was old, weathered by years of rain and sun. I'd crossed it hundreds of times before. Tyler, eager to show off, started bouncing lightly on the planks, laughing when they creaked under his sneakers. "Grandma, look, this thing's gonna collapse one day. Good thing I'm strong enough to handle it." I shook my head, half amused, half worried. "Be careful, Tyler. That bridge isn't as sturdy as you think." But before I could finish, the moment happened. One of the boards snapped clean through with a sickening crack. Tyler's foot slipped, and in an instant, his body lurched sideways. His phone went flying as he grabbed for the railing, but the old wood gave way, splintering in his hands. "Grandma!" he cried, panic flashing in his voice. Time slowed. My heart thundered in my chest as I watched him dangle, one leg through the hole, his arms flailing to catch hold of anything solid. The creek below wasn't deep, but the rocks were sharp, and a fall could break bones or worse.
Without thinking, without hesitation, I moved. Instinct kicked in. I reached for him. A sudden surge of strength flooded my veins. "Tyler!" I cried, my voice bursting through. "Hold on!" I grabbed him by the wrist, the weight of his body pulling hard against me. My muscles screamed, but I didn't let go. "Hold on," I repeated, my words filled with strength. In another instant, I heaved him back up to safety. We collapsed together, breathless, hearts pounding in unison. His face was pale, his eyes wide, but he was safe, alive. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the rush of the creek beneath us and the hammering of our hearts. Finally, Tyler whispered, "Grandma, you saved me." I looked at him, tears stinging my eyes, and managed a shaky smile. "Too weak, am I?" He blinked, his mouth opening and closing as if searching for words, but the shock and awe in his eyes said more than words ever could. That day, everything changed.
Tyler sat on the edge of the broken bridge, still trembling from the near fall. His eyes darted from the splintered wood to me, then back again, as though he was replaying the moment over and over in his head. I sat beside him, catching my breath, the adrenaline slowly fading from my veins. My hands were scraped, my muscles sore, but I didn't care. All I cared about was that he was safe. Finally, he spoke. His voice was shaky but soft. "Grandma, I didn't think you could do that." I turned to him, raising an eyebrow. "Do what? Save you? Or be strong enough to?" He looked down, shame clouding his young face. "Both. I always thought you were, too fragile. I didn't think you could handle something like that." His words weren't cruel this time, they were honest, but they still carried the sting of his earlier judgments. I sighed, gazing out at the water below us. "Tyler, do you know what strength really is?" He frowned, wiping at the sweat on his forehead. "Lifting weights? Running fast? Fighting off danger?" I shook my head slowly. "Strength isn't about muscles, Tyler. It's about standing firm when life tries to knock you down. It's about pushing through when you're tired, when you're scared, when no one else believes you can. Strength isn't just in the body, it's in the spirit." He was quiet, staring at me with new eyes, as if seeing me for the very first time. "You think I'm weak because I can't carry groceries the way I used to, or because my hands aren't as steady as they once were? But let me tell you something. When I was your age, I had no choice but to be strong. I raised your father and his siblings during times when we had barely enough to eat. I worked 2 jobs, came home exhausted, and still had to cook and clean. I carried burdens you couldn't even imagine." His mouth parted, but no words came. "And even now," I continued, my voice steady but filled with quiet fire, "strength lives inside me. It's what allowed me to pull you up today. Not muscles, not youth, but the will to protect the people I love." Tyler swallowed hard. His eyes glistened as though the weight of my words sank deep into his heart. I didn't know, Grandma." I reached out, placing my weathered hand over his. "I know you didn't, sweetheart. And I don't blame you. Young people often mistake wrinkles for weakness. But let me tell you, every line on my face is a story of survival. Every ache in my bones is a reminder of battles fought and won." For the first time, he didn't look at me like I was fragile. He looked at me with respect. We sat there in silence for a while, the creek gurgling beneath us, the air cool and sweet around us. Tyler fidgeted, clearly deep in thought. Finally, he whispered, "Grandma, I'm sorry. For all the times I said you were too weak. For treating you like you couldn't do anything. I smiled gently, squeezing his hand. Apologies aren't necessary. What matters is that you've learned, and you'll carry this with you. One day, you'll remember that strength doesn't always shout. It whispers, but it holds firm. His face softened, a boy humbled by truth. Then, to my surprise, he leaned over and hugged me tightly. I love you, Grandma. My eyes filled with tears as I held him close. I love you too, Tyler. Always. When we finally stood to leave, Tyler insisted on helping me cross the bridge carefully, his hand steadying me, as though he now saw me not as a burden, but as a partner. Every step we took back toward the house felt different, lighter, as though something had shifted between us. That evening over dinner, Tyler couldn't stop glancing at me with a mix of awe and guilt. Finally, as we finished our souk, he blurted, "Grandma, you were like a superhero today. Seriously, I can't believe you pulled me up like that." I chuckled softly. Superheroes wear capes, Tyler. I just wore my love for you. He grinned sheepishly, but then grew serious. I think I understand now. It's not about how strong your arms are. It's about how strong your heart is. I nodded, pride swelling in my chest. Exactly. And never forget it. From that day forward, Tyler changed. The little jabs about me being old or weak stopped. Instead, he began to ask me questions about my past, about my struggles, about the life I had lived long before he was born. He listened, really listened, and every time he did, I saw his respect grow. One evening, as I told him about the time I worked 3 shifts in a row to save enough money for Christmas gifts, his eyes widened. You did all that? Alone? Yes, because that's what family means. You do whatever it takes. He shook his head in disbelief. I thought life was hard for me sometimes, but I didn't realize how much harder it was for you. You're incredible, Grandma. The pride in his voice warmed me more than any blanket ever could. But the lesson wasn't just for him. It was for me too. That day on the bridge reminded me that no matter how many years pass, no matter how many birthdays I celebrate, I am not useless. I am not frail. I am not too weak. I am still me, strong, resilient, capable. And maybe, just maybe, by showing Tyler the truth, I had planted a seed in him, a seed that would grow into empathy, respect, and an understanding of the strength that comes not from age or youth, but from love. As I tucked him into bed that night, he looked up at me with a sleepy smile. Grandma, I'll never underestimate you again. I brushed the hair from his forehead, whispering, Good, because the day you do, I'll just have to prove you wrong all over again. He laughed softly, then drifted into dreams. And I sat there, watching him breathe, feeling the quiet triumph of a grandmother who had once again turned doubt into proof, weakness into power, and love into legacy.
The days that followed carried a quiet shift in the house. It wasn't loud or dramatic, no big speeches, no sudden tears. But I felt it in the way Tyler looked at me. He no longer glanced past me as if I were invisible. He no longer rolled his eyes when I offered advice. Instead, his gaze lingered, curious, searching, almost reverent. One Saturday morning, as I was humming while folding laundry, Tyler came bounding into the room. "Grandma, can I help?" I nearly dropped the sheet in surprise. "Tyler? Help with chores?" This was new. "Of course, sweetheart," I said warmly, handing him a pillowcase. He clumsily folded it, making more wrinkles than he smoothed, but I didn't correct him. The effort meant more than perfection. As we worked side by side, he asked, "Grandma, when you were young, were you strong like the way you are now?" I chuckled softly. "Tyler, I've always been strong, just in different ways. When I was your age, I was quick on my feet, could carry heavy loads and run without getting winded. But life taught me a deeper kind of strength, the kind that comes from endurance, patience, and love." He nodded slowly, absorbing every word. That evening, when his friends came over to play video games, I overheard something that nearly brought tears to my eyes. One of the boys teased, "Why don't you come out more, Tyler? You're always hanging around your grandma. Isn't she too old to do anything fun?" Normally, Tyler might have laughed along, but instead he straightened, his voice firm. "You don't get it. My grandma's stronger than any of us. She saved my life last week. She's not just old, she's powerful." The boys blinked at him, surprised. One of them scoffed, "Come on, she's just a grandma." Tyler shook his head, unwavering. "No, she's more than that. She's lived through things we can't even imagine. You should hear her stories. She's tougher than anyone I know." I stood in the kitchen doorway, unseen, my heart swelling with pride. That moment was more precious than gold. Tyler wasn't just learning respect, he was defending it. The days that followed carried a quiet shift in the house. It wasn't loud or dramatic, no big speeches, no sudden tears. But I felt it in the way Tyler looked at me. He no longer glanced past me as if I were invisible. He no longer rolled his eyes when I offered advice. Instead, his gaze lingered, curious, searching, almost reverent. One Saturday morning, as I was humming while folding laundry, Tyler came bounding into the room. "Grandma, can I help?" I nearly dropped the sheet in surprise. "Tyler? Help with chores?" This was new. "Of course, sweetheart," I said warmly, handing him a pillowcase. He clumsily folded it, making more wrinkles than he smoothed, but I didn't correct him. The effort meant more than perfection. As we worked side by side, he asked, "Grandma, when you were young, were you strong like the way you are now?" I chuckled softly. "Tyler, I've always been strong, just in different ways. When I was your age, I was quick on my feet, could carry heavy loads and run without getting winded. But life taught me a deeper kind of strength, the kind that comes from endurance, patience, and love." He nodded slowly, absorbing every word. That evening, when his friends came over to play video games, I overheard something that nearly brought tears to my eyes. One of the boys teased, "Why don't you come out more, Tyler? You're always hanging around your grandma. Isn't she too old to do anything fun?" Normally, Tyler might have laughed along, but instead he straightened, his voice firm. "You don't get it. My grandma's stronger than any of us. She saved my life last week. She's not just old, she's powerful." The boys blinked at him, surprised. One of them scoffed, "Come on, she's just a grandma." Tyler shook his head, unwavering. "No, she's more than that. She's lived through things we can't even imagine. You should hear her stories. She's tougher than anyone I know." I stood in the kitchen doorway, unseen, my heart swelling with pride. That moment was more precious than gold. Tyler wasn't just learning respect, he was defending it.
The following Sunday, at church, Tyler insisted on sitting with me instead of his usual spot with his friends. As the service ended, he tugged at my sleeve. "Grandma, can you tell Mr. Jenkins the story about how you worked 3 jobs? I think he'd be impressed." I laughed gently, patting his hand. "Sweetheart, it's not about impressing anyone. Stories aren't for pride, they're for passing on lessons." But later, when Mr. Jenkins struck up conversation, Tyler interrupted eagerly.
Did you know my grandma once saved enough money to buy her whole family gifts by working non-stop for 3 days? She never gave up. She's amazing. Mr. Jenkins raised his brows, then smiled at me with newfound respect. Well, Tyler, I'd say you've got quite a role model right here. I smiled modestly, but inside, my heart danced. Weeks passed, and little by little, I noticed Tyler changing. He began opening doors for me, not out of pity, but out of honor. He asked me questions about history, about how things used to be when I was a girl. He even asked me to teach him how to cook one of our old family recipes. One evening, as we stirred a pot of stew together, he asked, "Grandma, were you ever scared when you had to be strong? Like when you were raising Dad?" I paused, stirring slowly. Of course, Tyler. Courage doesn't mean you're never scared. It means you face the fear anyway. I was scared plenty of times. Scared I wouldn't have enough to feed my children. Scared I'd fail them. But love gave me the strength to push through. He nodded, deep in thought. So, strength comes from love? I smiled. Always. The real turning point came one afternoon when the neighborhood kids were playing basketball in the street. Tyler invited me to watch, and I sat on the porch, knitting while the ball thumped against the pavement. At one point, the ball rolled near me. Before Tyler could run over, I stood, scooped it up, and with surprising accuracy, tossed it right into the hoop. The kids froze. Tyler's jaw dropped. Then he broke into a huge grin. "Did you see that? My grandma just nailed it." The other boys laughed, impressed. "No way, Mrs. Harris, that was awesome." I chuckled, brushing my hands together. Just because I'm older doesn't mean I've forgotten everything. Tyler puffed up with pride. "Told you she's strong and skilled." In that moment, I saw how his admiration for me wasn't just private anymore. He was proud of me publicly. He wanted others to see what he now knew, that Grandma wasn't weak, she was a force. Later that evening, as we sat on the porch together, Tyler said quietly, "Grandma, you changed the way I see people. I think I used to judge people too quickly. I didn't realize how much they might have gone through or how strong they really are." I smiled, resting my hand on his shoulder. "That's the beauty of growing, Tyler. The more we listen, the more we understand. And the more we understand, the kinder we become." He leaned against me, his small frame warm and trusting. I'm going to remember that, always. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of orange and pink. I sat there, content, knowing that the lesson had taken root. Strength is not just about saving someone once, it's about planting seeds of wisdom that grow into forests of respect. And as Tyler's laughter rang out that night, echoing across the quiet neighborhood, I knew this was only the beginning.
It was a few weeks later when the true test of Tyler's new perspective arrived. The day started out ordinary enough. I was in the kitchen rolling dough for biscuits when Tyler stormed in from school, his face red with frustration. He dropped his backpack onto the floor with a heavy thud and slumped into the chair across from me. "What's the matter, sweetheart?" I asked, wiping my hands on my apron. He groaned, running his fingers through his hair. "It's this science project. We have to build something that can hold weight, but everything I try keeps collapsing. I worked for hours, Grandma, and then one of the kids laughed and said I was wasting my time." I tilted my head, studying him. His shoulders sagged, his confidence broken. "Tyler," I said gently, "do you remember what we talked about? About strength?" He looked up, his eyes still damp with frustration. "Yeah, you said it's not just about muscles. It's about not giving up." I nodded. "That's right. Strength is about spirit, about perseverance, and it's about believing in yourself, even when others don't. He sat there for a moment, chewing on my words. Then, almost hesitantly, he asked, "Did you ever feel like giving up, Grandma?" I smiled softly, memories flickering through my mind. Many times. When your father was young, there were nights when I didn't know how I'd pay the bills or put food on the table, but giving up wasn't an option. I had people counting on me. And I discovered something. When you push past the point where you think you can't go on, that's when you find your real strength. He leaned forward, his young face lit with curiosity. "So, even if I fail, I should keep trying?" "Exactly," I said, reaching over to squeeze his hand. "Failure isn't the opposite of strength, it's part of it. Every failure teaches you how to succeed." His expression softened. "Okay, Grandma, I'll try again." That evening, we worked together on his project. I sat at the table with him, guiding gently, while he experimented with different designs. Every time one collapsed, his shoulders slumped, but then he'd glance at me, and I'd give him a steady nod. "Try again," I'd say. And he did, over and over, until finally, after hours of persistence, his little structure stood firm under the weight. His eyes widened in amazement.
"I did it!" he shouted, his grin stretching from ear to ear. I clapped my hands together. "See? That's the strength I was talking about. Not just in your arms, but in your heart." He beamed at me, pride radiating from him. "Thanks, Grandma. I almost gave up, but I remembered you pulling me up that day. You didn't give up on me, so I'm not going to give up on myself." My heart swelled. That moment was worth more than anything. The next day at school, Tyler presented his project. Later that evening, he burst into the door, practically glowing. "Grandma, they loved it. My teacher said I showed creativity and perseverance. And you know what else? The kid who laughed at me earlier, he came up and said he was impressed." I smiled, hugging him tight. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. You see, respect is earned by showing strength, not boasting about it." He hugged me back fiercely, whispering, "I couldn't have done it without you." But the story didn't end there. The following weekend, Tyler's baseball team had a big game. I sat in the bleachers, cheering loudly, knitting in my lap when the innings grew tense. Tyler stepped up to bat, and on his first two swings, he struck out. I could see the doubt creeping into his eyes from where I sat. He kicked at the dirt, shoulders drooping, just like when his project had collapsed. As he glanced toward the stands, his eyes met mine. I didn't shout or wave. I just gave him the same steady nod I had given at the table. He straightened, gripped the bat tighter, and on the next pitch, crack! The ball soared across the field, sending the crowd into cheers. His teammates surrounded him, and I couldn't stop my smile. Later, when he ran over to me, still flushed with excitement, he said, "Grandma, I remembered what you said about strength being in the spirit, and I didn't give up." I hugged him tightly, whispering, "That's my boy." That night, as we sat together on the porch, Tyler turned to me with a thoughtful look. "Grandma," he said slowly, "I think I finally get it. You're strong, not because you can lift heavy things, but because you never give up. You keep fighting, even when things are hard. That's real strength." I smiled, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "Yes, Tyler, And now you carry that strength inside you too. One day when life tests you, you'll remember this lesson and you'll pass it on to someone else. He leaned against me, his voice soft. I promise I will. We sat in the quiet night, the crickets chirping, the stars twinkling above, and I knew that the lesson had taken root. My grandson would never again see me as weak, and more importantly, he would never underestimate the power of resilience in his own life.
The true test of everything Tyler had learned came sooner than either of us expected. It was a stormy Friday evening. The rain hammered the roof, and the wind howled through the trees like a chorus of ghosts. Tyler and I were inside, playing a quiet game of cards, when the lights flickered and went out. He jumped. "Grandma, the power!" "Shh," I said calmly, lighting the lantern I kept by the fireplace. "It's just the storm. We'll be fine." But a moment later, we heard a crash outside, a deep, heavy sound that made both our hearts skip. Tyler rushed to the window and gasped, "Grandma, the big tree fell, right across the road." I joined him, peering through the rain-smeared glass. Sure enough, the giant oak had toppled, blocking the street and crushing part of the neighbor's fence. "We need to check on the Johnsons," I said firmly, grabbing my coat. Tyler's eyes widened. "But Grandma, it's pouring out there. You can't—" I turned to him with a steady gaze. "This is what strength looks like, Tyler. When someone needs help, you don't hide. You act." He hesitated only a moment before nodding. "Okay, let's go together." The rain soaked us instantly, plastering our clothes to our skin. We fought against the wind until we reached the Johnsons' house. Mr. Johnson was outside, frantically trying to pull debris away from his fence. His young daughter was crying on the porch, frightened by the chaos. "Mr. Johnson," I called, "are you all right?" He looked up, relief washing over his face. "We're okay, but the tree knocked down some wires. It's not safe." Tyler froze, fear flashing in his eyes. I could see it, the uncertainty, the doubt, the instinct to back away. But then he glanced at me, and in that moment, something shifted. I didn't even have to say a word. He squared his shoulders, swallowed his fear, and ran toward the porch. "Come on, Emily," he said gently, helping the little girl inside. "We'll keep you safe." I joined Mr. Johnson, guiding him back from the live wires, reminding him of the emergency number to call. My voice was steady, clear, calm. The same tone I'd used countless times raising children and facing life's storms. Minutes later, the fire department arrived. They praised Tyler for acting quickly to get Emily to safety. And when they spoke of my calm in the crisis, Tyler's chest swelled with pride. Back inside our warm home later, Tyler sat across from me, his hair still damp, his eyes wide with everything that had just happened. "Grandma," he whispered, "I get it now. Strength isn't about not being scared. It's about doing the right thing even when you are scared." I smiled, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. "Exactly. And tonight, you proved your strength." He looked down, then back at me, his voice trembling with emotion. "But I only knew what to do because of you. You've been teaching me all along."
Tears pricked my eyes. "Tyler, that's what family is. We pass down strength, wisdom, and love. And one day, you'll do the same for someone else." He leaned over and hugged me tight, his voice muffled against my shoulder. "I'll never forget this. Never." The following week, word spread around the neighborhood about what happened that night. People spoke of how Tyler helped the Johnson girl and how Grandma Harris stayed calm and steady while the storm raged. At the grocery store, a woman approached me, smiling warmly. "Your grandson told us what you did. You must be so proud." I glanced at Tyler, who stood beside me with his chin lifted high. "I am," I said softly, "more than I can say." And I meant it. Not just proud of him, but proud of the bond we'd built.
proud that he now carried forward the truth I had lived my whole life, that strength is not in muscles, but in spirit. That night, as Tyler and I sat once more on the porch, the storm long past, the air fresh and cool, he asked quietly, "Grandma, do you ever get tired of being strong?" I chuckled, brushing his hair back. "Sometimes, but then I remember, I'm not just strong for me, I'm strong for the people I love, and that makes it worth it." He nodded slowly, his young eyes wise beyond his years. "Then I'll be strong for you too, always." I kissed his forehead, my heart full. "That's all I could ever ask, sweetheart." And as the stars shone above us, I knew that no matter what storms lay ahead, my grandson had learned the lesson that would guide him all his life. Strength is not about age. It is not about power. It is not about what the world thinks you can or cannot do. It is about love. And love, when tested, can move mountains, calm storms, and even pull a boy back from the edge of a broken bridge.